Go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. We are in Zoom video conferencing. Mr. Howell?
Kate Briggs,
Here.
Jenny Butler,
Here.
Jenny Cummings,
Here.
Marge Gavoni,
Here.
Pete Hensler,
Here.
Anna Keeney,
Here.
Kate Levier,
Here.
Scott McLean,
Here.
Christina Small,
Here.
and Molly Cochran.
Here.
Mr. Patton is going to lead our pledge for us. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
We don't have any adjustments for tonight.
Okay, it's now time for public input, an opportunity for any of the public to comment on items which are not on the agenda. Anybody have anything to comment on? Okay. We will now begin with A-Team cost centers, starting with Dr. Rhodes.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to share about the 22 budget for primary school. I'm gonna use the budget request form that should all be in your packet. Looks like this at the top, and I'll walk you through that this evening. And it should be brief. However, before I get into that, I just want to say thank you for all the support by the school board during these difficult times that we're all experiencing. It is truly appreciated. So I wanted just before looking ahead, I wanted to look a little behind at first, actually. And when we started the school year, we created school goals based on feedback from staff, as well as some time over the summer that we reflected on what we experienced in the prior school year, where we had started the year with in-person school and went to a closure in the spring. And so from those opportunities to talk about what our goals should be for the year, we really focused on some of our goals we had in the past, but really lasering in and focusing on two key things: how to give effective feedback to our learners, because we knew no matter what this school year we were in was going to be like, we knew there's going to be a lot of uncertainty along with it. But something that we know is good teaching, no matter where it's happening and how it's happening, is giving our learners really good feedback so they can learn from it. And so that was one of our goals. And one of the new learnings for all of us was how to use the platform Seesaw to provide some of that feedback, and know that some of it was going to have to be virtual just because of the CDC guidelines. The other piece of the other focus for us this year was on relationships and connections. And we know as instructors that to engage our learners, we need to have strong relationships and connections with our learners to be effective. At the same time, with such uncertainty around the world right now and so many families struggling, we felt it was even more important this year that we really truly looked at how we could improve upon how we connect with our learners and our families, support them, serve them, but also have strong relationships when there's so many challenges to being able to keep connected. Because you know, we're an elementary school, and in normal times, hugs, high fives, fist bumps happen all the time, and that's just not how we're able to operate now. So I'm pleased by what's happened this year in regards to those two focus areas. I believe there's been new learning for our staff, but it's also been successful when we're thinking back about what's transpired this year around giving learners good feedback and maintaining strong relationships and connections with our families. So let's look ahead a little bit. So looking ahead, we know that In the future, we're still in the midst of an implementation of the Ready Classroom for the math program. That will continue. We've had training this year. However, there's certainly, because of kind of the uniqueness of the last 2 years of implementing the program, there's plenty of new learning for it to continue with it. And, as we become more and more familiar with the program and continue to receive training, we're going to get better at being able to differentiate the learning for our learners and really customize what their math experience looks like. So that's really the next steps in regards to our work around math. And want to really keep working on just feedback as well as those relationships. Those focus areas are going to have to continue on because this is a process with this pandemic, and it's not just going to go away overnight. But another area that we're going to put our energies into beyond just the math programs we look forward is really being strategic about how we support our learners to fill in those learning gaps. And that work has already begun. For example, we have been providing a menu of interventions that can be accessed online that are being implemented by our academic support staff. They're highly trained, highly skilled folks. They're using research-based practices, however, they're using them online, and they're open to all of our learners. So that helps create some equity opportunities. Of course, everyone's family's dynamics different. Some of these kiddos are at daycares, or have got a relative watching them, or mom or dad are working, and they're also trying to support the learning. That being said, though, that opportunity is there, and then we've already started to discuss internally what can we do over the summer to help support families and fill in those learning gaps as well. So that that work will continue on next year, because it is going to be a process. We're going to have to create some new systems to help support that, and it will be something that will evolve over time as well. But we've already started to implement things to address those learning gaps. For example, with the online interventions, and some of those are in the social emotional realm. We've actually got our guidance counselor who has started online interventions as well that can be accessed by families, and we'll build from that. And you'll hear about some of the opportunities we'll be able to provide this summer in the near future as well. So with that, I'm going to move on to just what about cost center, our cost center, and what are some increases there? There really isn't a fair amount of increases to the Wyndham Primary School budget as we look forward to FY22. However, the one area that I did want to speak about was in regards to the goal of creating greater uniformity and addressing transient specialists, and being able to include in this current this FY22 budget an increase to some of our specials, art, music, PE, and library, to be able to address uniformity across the district in regards to the specials, and also supporting when we have specialists who work in more than one building, making sure we're giving them adequate time to travel and to plan accordingly so they can provide high quality instruction. So you'll see that on your sheet here at the bottom, it says art a 0.2 increase, music a 0.3, physical education a 0.2, and then library ed techs, because at the elementary level the librarians are librarian ed techs. You'll see that as a 0.64. Now, since you've received your budget book, actually before you received your budget book, Mrs. Webster and I, Stacy Webster and I, have been discussing the fact that in reality, the library ed tech increase only needs to be 0.44 and would allow us to reach that goal of creating that uniformity across the district. So in your next version, version 5, you're going to see that number not be library ed tech 0.64, how it'll be instead 0.44. And then on your budget cover sheet, you will see a change as well under support staff. It currently says that the budget is planning for 2 full-time library ed techs, and in your next version that will reflect 1.8, which will come in alignment with the amount of specialists full-time we have in the other areas like art, music, and PE. And then in regards to decreases, there are some slight decreases in the budget in areas where, from looking back at spending over the course of the past couple of years, made some decreases too, but those are all very slight decreases, just to reflect actual spending. And then I'm going to turn over to you in just a moment. However, I feel very confident that with the budget that I'm proposing for Wyndham Primary School, that we can continue to maintain the quality programming and instruction that we're able to provide for our families and our learners at this time. So thank you.
Questions? I guess not. Oh, wait, Pete has a hand up.
All right, thanks. Just one question on that front sheet in terms of enrollment. And it seems like we ask these questions every year. Towards the top of the paper, the first column, we've got student enrollment as of March 9th, 2020 at 754. And then down below it, where it's on the line of total staff FTEs, it says students 802. And I'm just wondering what the date is, like that 802, when is that as of?
Right. So my understanding, and Mr. Howe might know more. However, I believe there's a certain date in the fall when we report enrollment to the state, and that's where that number comes from. Whereas the number 39020, that's like that date. That was the number of our enrollment. And at primary, the enrollment does go up and down throughout the school year. It is kind of amazing how it does fluctuate. And so that's my understanding, that the number 802 was based on a certain day when we submit our enrollment for the school district. But I'll defer to Mr. Howe.
Yeah, and Chris, so that number at the top, the as of date, that's actual as of that date, or that's what we're expecting? Because the March 9th, 2020 number of 754, kind of then it goes down to this 802 that I was referring to. But then if you look in the right-hand column, you've got 867 as of December 9th, which matches up with the number that's below that on that same. So I'm just trying to figure out like what might be anticipated enrollment and what's actual enrollment. Because
There's a wide disparity there, and Pete, I'm just checking to make sure, because there's an enrollment tab which had the most up-to-date enrollments. And I'm just gonna grab it right now in my budget book, just one second. So I would just say the 857 number, Pete, looks to be incorrect. I'm not sure where that's coming. We should be somewhere in that 802 category for where we're going to be for next year. But I'm going to just go through my budget book here in a second while we're doing other questions, and I can get you a final answer.
Oh yeah, okay, good, because if it's truly going to be 867, then those ratios are climbing up a little bit, and wondering if we might want to take a look at adding. So yeah, if we can get some clarity on that, that would be great.
So one thing that might be helpful, Pete, is a couple of things. We've got to take into consideration that we've got kiddos in two different environments right now as well. That may be where some of that number is coming from. You've got our hybrid, you've got our remote, and then also we're anticipating, which is approximately 20 of our learners coming back from that are fully homeschooled this year. So that does play into how the numbers are all being forecasted. When you look at the right-hand side, I understand your question was about the left-hand side.
Pete, the correct number should be 816.
816. And that's
816. I'm not sure where that other number got pulled on that cover sheet. We'll make the correction. I just went back to my budget presentation, which had the most up to date as of last week of February. And that was 816 for Wyndham Primary School.
all right. Thanks.
Kate?
Thank you. Continuing on enrollment, Kyle, can you, when I'm looking at kindergarten, it's predicted, is that a real live enrollment number for kindergarten, or is that an anticipated? The increase of 25 under kindergarten? I'm on the very front sheet, enrollment, Jazz.
Yes, that would be a forecast.
That's a forecast.
Yes.
Any concern about the class size there? We have the same number of teachers, but we're up 25 students, which is 25 is over the so-called recommended class size.
Still 18.
Yeah,
Right.
it's 18.75. I mean, we've had class size of 18 and 19 before at kindergarten. Yes, it is definitely on the high side. However, we have had that. It's, kindergarten is a real tricky number in normal times. Trying to base it on two things. One, what's been the trend over about 5 years? And the other piece is we are familiar that we did have some families that decided not to send their child to kindergarten this year. And so we anticipate that some of those families will be sending next year, and they will have to start after kindergarten.
So that number could change, right?
Absolutely. One piece that the district is doing to try to help with that is we've already started that registration process. And on April 30th, after April 30th, we're going to start making calls to those families, and the screening this year for kindergarten, like it was last year, Kate, will be done via phone calls. And so our hope is that we'll actually, as best as we can, with good effort, have a more firm number, as we get even closer to, to the June budget.
Will you clarify for me the little asterisk includes Title I? So the 18.75.
Yeah, Title 2A, yeah.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a grant that's written every year by the district, and it has, at least since I've been the principal of primary, it has included one teacher from primary through federal funding. So through the regular budget, there's 11 kindergarten teachers funded, and then there's an extra one for a total of 12 that comes from that federal funding.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it might be helpful. I know it's not the question being asked. However, it is related to enrollment. And I would just to kind of keep in mind, like, for example, this year, we've been hovering around 173 kindergartners in our total enrollment, remote and hybrid together. And that's down from what we forecasted over 200 for the year, or approximately 200 for the year. So that's where we're also trying to take into account that some families have decided to delay their children coming to kindergarten.
So that makes it more questionable, because if you go to the left hand, it says kindergarten students 200, and you say that it would be more like 173, 174, something like
Right. So because that number, Janie, was based on 3/9/20.
right. No, I'm looking at from there, that 200, just say, even if it's 200, they would be on the right-hand column, that would be first grade next year. And it says 21.
Right.
So that's an overage of quite a bit in the first grade.
Right.
Everything else seems to be okay, but that.
Yeah. So and you know what? For some of us that have for some of you that have been on board before, you may you may remember this experience. The way these numbers are set up in regards to how this gets presented, they're not they're typically not numbers that are in the live. So what I do is I create a secondary, which Chris was referring to, a secondary sheet in regards to what's happening right now in our school. So for example, the number 173 was from recent looking over at how many kiddos are in kindergarten right now, which would then mean they all are going to move on to first, which would be the 173. So just kind of to give you an idea, and the current first grade has approximately 216 in it, moving on to second. And then the current second grade, moving on to third grade, has 207. So that's with a forecast of approximately 220 was what I had originally. I know it says 225 on here for next year, but the number 816, that's how it came about. And if Chris wants me to, I'd be more than glad to email him that. I think he's maybe already has it, but if not, I can make sure you have that so you can see what's happening right now.
I'm,
Actually, I think Kyle, it's your microphone, so I'm going to mute you. I think part of what the other issue we're running into is in our predictions is the 108 or so individuals that have registered for homeschooling, that they are actually captured within our numbers. So we had to do kind of a 2-year look back to see, just assuming everybody's going to come back. So part of that difference between even the 200 to the 171 are people who have chosen to homeschool this year versus the remote or hybrid.
thank you. Marge? You're mute, Marge.
Sorry. Okay, on the same vein, just so a refresher, per our policy, what is the max amount of students we're supposed to have in elementary grades? Chris, somebody?
I'm going to let Kyle do that one.
I believe it's a range, Marge.
Yeah,
So my understanding, at least what I've always gone under, is for K1 it's 16 to 18, and for grades 2 and 3 it's 18 to 22, but it's a range, like it's a suggested or recommended range.
okay, so,
So what I mean is we don't have a ceiling.
okay. So if we use these numbers that are here, you'd be out of, possibly a little out of whack, but if we use what you feel are more reality numbers, you'll be in line, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. I have
Yes.
one more question on the pink pages, and it's very faint, but anyway, it's your first pink page. I think it's, oh God, page 57. Mine's very faint.
Yes.
More than a little halfway down is ed tech media salary, and there was a big jump. Does this go back to what you were basically saying on the first page? Is this money here what would have been for an additional person, and it will change, or?
Yeah, so it will, the number will increase from FY21 FY22, but it won't be as much as you see here, because it won't be an additional 0.64, it'll be additional 0.44.
Okay, because here it's an addition of $20,205.24. Okay, so it'll be some piece of it, but that's the explanation for that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's all I got.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Kyle. Please tell your staff how proud we are of all the work that they do and all the work that you do to bring them to such a good place.
Can do and will do. Thank you. Have a good night now.
You too. Now, Mr. Patton.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I just want to start off with, obviously on the board agenda tonight is really around the Wyndham Middle School project. For us in terms of school goals over the next 5 years, that's going to be a big push, really taking a look at how the future of teaching and learning is at the middle school, how that I think matches up with the new strategic plan and making sure that we're in line with that and really thinking about what that's going to look like. And then how do we get our staff there, not only in building a structure that can meet those needs, but then also continuing the professional development, the conversations about what that teaching and learning looks like so that we open the doors with a building that meets our needs and that we're ready for kids. And I've said this before, I think one of my worst fears is to create a newly designed building, but not have the actual teaching on the ground ready for that. And so that's going to be a big push for us, is really thinking about what that looks like and then working backwards with the 5-year plan to be able to get there. And I'm sure there'll be more, conversations along the way for that. In addition to that big piece, obviously on everybody's mind is COVID, what school looks like next year. And for us, once we have an idea of what school looks like, is really making sure that we've been thoughtful about how to prep kids and how to prep families for that and how to support our teachers with that. So I didn't want to pass that up as obviously a big topic and a big push for us next year as we get into a new school year. In terms of numbers, certainly be brief, but if both of these two pieces of paper would probably be helpful. So just in terms of numbers, since getting into ratios is obviously important and taking a look at that. Pete, just to make sure these numbers on here are accurate. And so 652 would be our current population with remote and hybrid learners as well. And then looking at a reduction next year of about 25 kids. So next year is the last year of that, what we call that big bubble. So you can see about a 50 student difference between class sizes in 6th, 7th, and 8th next year. In terms of what that does for our teacher load, we're at 28 teachers currently in terms of homerooms. Those are content teachers, ELA, social studies, math, and science. And so next year would be a reduction of 1 teacher. We've talked about this before. That is not a reduction in force. That particular position is already accounted for in a resignation that happened early on in the year. So just what that equates to is I don't have to tell anyone, sorry, you don't have a job here anymore, if that makes any sense, because sometimes I think that's a concern. In terms of, so that's a reduction in overall cost. In terms of an increase would be jobs for Maine graduates. And so that's just a cost sharing model that we were at 25% of the cost before, and now we're at 50%. Chris, I can't remember the exact number. I think it was 25,000 that it equates to, as opposed to 12.5. And I think you had some other line that was earmarked for that, unless I am dreaming that up in terms of that would cover that cost. But
It's currently in the budget. We did have to move it over to the regular budget.
Okay.
But you're correct that it's actually more than half is paid for by JMG. We pay a portion of it.
That's it in a nutshell. You can look at ratios there. The 6th grade next year is kind of right on that borderline. So we would watch that. If there's a significant reduction in the number of kids, then we could look at perhaps reducing a position if we didn't need that. But right at that 198 mark, we typically have some move-ins. Also with some of the turbulence with kids coming back from being homeschooled. So we'll just keep an eye on that as we go forward. And then you can see for 8th grade, especially given our room sizes, things are tight, but we've made it work before with previous numbers. So we'll make it work again. That is all I have, and open to questions.
Anybody have any questions? I'd like to say that I like the idea of planning for having your feet on the ground, ready to go with the Wyndham Middle School. You have a vision, and if you can begin to work on it with your staff as of now, so that they're ready to go in 2080 when the thing is finally built. Yeah, I think that's a great that's a great thing to do. I would, however, question, I mean, I think that's really good to do, but you still have to teach 5 more years or, 3 more years until you get there. So that's just a question I have.
Yeah, I think Janie, some of that also comes down to understanding what some of the space limitations do to our ability to provide some of the programming that we want to provide.
Mhm.
So a topic that I'm sure will come up in the building committee and in the construction plans are things like maker spaces, which
Right.
are really spaces designed to allow hands-on exploratory projects to start to happen. And when we think about a maker space here, the closest that we can get to that are STEM rooms, which are very specific to applied arts and not necessarily available to teams to be able to even sign out or have the types of tools, storage, materials in them to create, to make, to use those materials to problem solve. And
Mhm.
so I think as we move forward and we look at increasing those experiences for kids, I guess what my hope is we realize like, oh, those things are really hard in this current space. However, when we move to a new space, these are the types of things that will be available for us, really identifying what some of those barriers are. We don't really have a common space here. As you all know, we don't have a space that all students can gather in. We use Ryan's auditorium for that. And so there we already can identify some limitations. I hope as we move forward, we are very thoughtful about the school, how that can fit the needs of kids for 50 years and beyond when, I'm no longer here. It'd be nice to know that the school was designed in a way to meet the changing, the changing demands of education, and that it's built flexible enough to accomplish things that we didn't even think about at this time. And I think that's some of obviously the limitations with this building. It was poorly designed. I don't think any of the architects that designed it are listening in, but it's awful in terms of really thinking about kids' needs, about the flow, and then obviously the size of the classrooms and other spaces.
Marge? You're muted again.
I did it again. I apologize. I just wanted to share something. Being with the 2 technical schools, WRVC and PATHS, and Drew's might be already aware of this, that they are looking into setting up programs for 8th graders. So in line, and by the time they probably get that set, hopefully we have our new middle school, and hopefully there can be some coordination there. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there.
That's great. Anyone else? Thanks, Drew. Please also convey to your staff how proud we are of them as they join with you to create this new space. It's exciting times.
Will do. Thank you. And thank you for the support.
All right. Mr. Karen.
Hello. So if you look at our numbers, we're going to have, there's an increase in students. The projected increase is close to 90 students for next year. We are confident that we can manage the increase in students without having to add any staff. And additionally, if you look at, there's not a whole lot to look at in my operating budget because it's very, very similar to last year. So the trick for us is, I think we've talked before this time last year where we've started the push to have all students be enrolled in 6 classes all the time. I think that sets our students up better for being competitive with other communities in terms of transcripts and the like. So in order to do that without adding staff, we're looking for some additional electives to be offered, and then some class sizes in the core classes are going to have to go up a bit. So it might not be completely feasible next year. We'll see what the COVID regulations look like. But that's the plan, is to keep the operating budget where it's at, try to make some smart decisions this year to set us up for that next year. The one change you would see is a 2/10 in French. We've been able to do some things in French this year, and we've shared a teacher with Drew. And we really think, as more and more schools are looking for 3 years of language, is becoming what 2 years of language used to be. So we're trying to give those opportunities for students. But there's not a lot to see in the budget. In my packet, I wrote a little bit about Eagle Block because we're proud of that. That's our remediation program that we set up to try to address incompletes from last year due to COVID, and it's working well. So we're now in semester 2 using that to address students who are struggling this year, with the hopes that we won't have to come with you like some communities have, and request a decrease in graduation requirements. We would prefer to try to provide supports to get our kids to the finish line without looking at decreasing the requirements. So I'm happy to take any questions. It's not my budget is not a lot of flash or pizzazz there. We're going to try to continue to do what we're doing and increase some elective opportunities for kids.
Anyone? Okay.
Before we move, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to share a link to the virtual robotics competition. Our kids qualified. They're going to finish up on their robot Friday afternoon after conferences are done, and then the competition runs all day Saturday. So hopefully we'll get that link up and running. I'll share that with all of you. You can see some of the good work that is being done based on the position that you supported for me a number of years ago.
That's terrific. Very glad to hear that. And please do, because that's interesting to me. I think the Eagle Block idea is for student support is really terrific. And I know you've been doing it for a while, but I really appreciate what you're doing now. So thanks. And please also, as I say to everyone else, convey to the staff how much we support them and how proud we are of them. Thank you. Okay, Craig, are you all set?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight and to discuss our budget a little bit and some of our programming. So from the outset, it looked like this potentially could have been a pretty difficult budget year. So initially, when we took a look at the budget, just tried to be mindful of the fact that revenue might be down a little bit. And so I looked for a couple of areas where we could realize some savings, but at the same time not impact negatively the student experience. So the first area that we looked at was, ironically, it seems strange, but the food budget. We have a pretty robust food budget. And this year we've been able to implement a partnership with the Wyndham Food Pantry that's supplied a steady stream of food supplies all through the pandemic. Anywhere, every week we provide anywhere from 2 bags of food to 20 bags of food, large grocery bags of food per week, depending on student need. And we determine student need both through direct asks of our students and then also sending a Google form home to families every week. And between the families responding to those forms and the students directly letting us know, we got a very good sense of the need for food. So we were able to cut our food budget by 40%, which is about a $3,000 savings, but that's more than made up for by our partnership with the Wyndham Food Pantry and through just private donations. We've had several $1,000s of private donations for our food program. And so between the pantry, the relationship with the pantry and private donations, we could cut our food budget by $3,000. The other place we looked at was our supplies budget. Because the RSU has a relationship with Ruth's Reusable Resources, we're able to more than make up for that cut, that 30%, things that we're able to procure at Ruth's include art supplies, office supplies of all kinds, stationery and envelopes, pens, paper, pencils. All this while supporting a nonprofit, a local nonprofit that does a lot of environmental good by diverting things that would otherwise end up in waste bins. We can use them, and they're high quality materials. So that seems to make sense to us. We were able to cut that budget by 30%, which is about a $1,500 savings. So in total, about $4,500 we were able to cut and still maintain the exact same student experience. And so we felt like that was a smart thing to do this year. So that's what we propose. The rest of the budget is exactly as it was last year. There are some fixed expenses that have gone up across the district, and those apply to Katahdin as well. But essentially, that's kind of the changes that we made on the budget. And then I'd also like to highlight a couple of cool programming things that we're doing this year, but I don't know if you want to address the budget questions first, or shall I go on to a little bit of highlights?
Please highlight.
Okay.
To hear those.
Great. This is the fun part. Okay, so this year we have 23 students. That's our largest number of students that we've ever served before. Because of the hybrid model, we've been able to accommodate that with transportation. So we have 23 students, and there's still about 30 students who are deemed appropriate for Katahdin that are on a waiting list at Wyndham High School. Friday, 2 of our students have volunteered to be on a student-teacher panel for the district-wide Professional Development Day, where they're going to explore the question of belonging in school and what it means to feel like you belong to a school, and kind of detail experiences where the students have felt a sense of belonging in school, and then conversely, moments along their journey where they haven't felt a sense of belonging, and they're helping the staff really look at that and understand how to create the experiences in schools where students feel a sense of belonging. So super excited about that. I did reference the food pantry. We gave it a name. It's called the Katahdin Food for Thought program. And in addition to the relationship with the food pantry, through a little bit of a social media campaign, we've had all kinds of donations come in for that. So that's been really exciting. We did notice during hybrid, there are a handful of students that really struggled with that just because of the lack of routine. And you throw in a 2-day-a-week schedule with an occasional holiday or a day off. And it really, a number of students really struggled with getting into rhythm. And so a couple of our staff identified that and figured out a really creative solution and have offered a 4-day-a-week program to 4 students who needed that level of consistency and routine and needed more hands-on learning. So with the help of the high school, we've been able to use the high school's wood shop and create a totally hands-on integrated wood shop program. And not only are they doing cool things like building a periodic table out of wood and learning chemistry, like bringing chemistry to life, they're also doing service learning with CJ Payne and the theater program, and building staging for the theater program, and just feeling useful and feeling needed. And that has transformed a number of kids' experience. And I've seen 2 or 3 students who are flailing under the regular kind of every other day schedule, who are now here 4 days a week and asked to come the 5th day on Friday. So that's amazing. So that's been really great. That's also been helped by Ashley Tempesta, who's a new special ed tech working with us, new this year. She's been a huge boon to the program and has just fit in perfectly. And the students really, really respect and enjoy working with her right away. So that's been great. And then also our Flex Friday program has just been great. Like from the outset, we realized that Fridays were a flexible day, right? So students could choose to engage online. They could choose to do targeted skills instructions. They could also choose to do some kind of enrichment, an art project. And we also have had an opportunity for students to come to school on Fridays. Those that wanted to come to school could come to school and get tutored, get one-on-one help, also engage in an art project. So there's a ton of choice built in. We also have adventure days on Fridays, and we've taken students kayaking, we've taken them mountain climbing, we've taken them mountain biking, fat tire biking. We've been to Shawnee Peak 6 times already this year. So the adventure element has endured the pandemic. We were worried if that was going to be able to survive the pandemic, but it has in very small groups. And that's been really great. We've even taken kids ice climbing. That's really small group, usually 1 or 2 students with Rod Netto. What else? And also counseling happens throughout. We have a really great counseling team. We've got 2 social work interns, one from UNE and one from USM, and Rod oversees them. And so we've been able to provide both remote counseling consistently and in-person counseling. And so we felt, given that we serve a population that has a lot of social emotional needs and targets, we've been able to really wrap around those students and provide them with really strong services during a really challenging time. We've done a lot of home visits where needed. And then lastly, the last kind of exciting thing is we're planning a summer school. We're going to have a 3-week summer school that's going to begin right at the end of regular school. So there won't be a break. We'll go right into summer school. We're targeting 8 students, mostly in their 3rd year or juniors, who are still credit deficient, that need credits in English and math and science. And so it'll be a combination of kind of traditional academics for a couple hours in the morning, followed by experiential programming and work at the community garden. Thursdays will be reserved for credit recovery for kids, targeted credit recovery, and also adventure programming. So those that really need the credit recovery will stay in and do that. And those that are kind of caught up and want to take an adventure, we'll go to the beach, we'll go hiking, we'll climb Pleasant Mountain, we'll do all kinds of fun things on Thursdays. And those are the highlights.
That's terrific.
Yeah, there's more, but that's what I
Of course.
sketched up.
Marge?
Okay, I'm unmuted this time. First off, I want to congratulate you. Have a very small staff, and I think you do a lot with a small number of people, and bravo for that piece of it. I think it's wonderful. On your cover page,
Yep.
Your number of students, should we disregard them because they're if I go from the left column to the right column, there's not a lot of it's a little odd. It's kind of off.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And I did ask Stacy Webster about that, where it says, are you talking about where it says 8 students in grade 9?
Yeah, and you're gonna have no seniors, and then it says like you have one in grade 9, and then the next year you have 9 in the next grade.
So we don't actually serve 9th graders at all. So I asked Stacy Webster about that, and apparently she rolls over the students in advance. So where it says 8 9th graders, we really have 8 seniors this year. And so she just rolled those over into the 9th grade because it's a prediction. So you're right, it doesn't line up. But basically where it says 8 9th graders, that's really 8 12th graders this year.
Yeah. Well, what is this? It might help if you could just, what is your total number of students? How's that?
23.
23.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kate?
I think she might be muted.
You're
No,
muted.
no, I know, I'm clicking the wrong thing. Hi, Craig, good to see you. Thanks for that update. A lot of exciting things happening. This is probably not a budget question, more of a programming question, but maybe for a later discussion with the board. But when I hear that there are 30 students on a wait list, that really caught my attention. And what is 23 like your capacity? Is that based on space and staffing?
Well, until this year, 22 has always been our capacity. This year, we were able to bump it up by 1 because of the hybrid schedule. So really, And the other reality was that many parents drove their students this year because of the pandemic. And so usually the 22 number is constrained by transportation because we use vans and we have 3 van drivers, and that maxes out our vans. So really it's constrained by transportation. The other reality is that we have a small space, and I can't really see many more than 22 or 23 functionally working in this particular space.
Okay. Would you clarify, did I hear that you do not, there are no 9th graders eligible for the program? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that's my understanding, is that when students come, a less restrictive placement really would be the high school. And so when kids come to us as 9th graders, the thought is that it's important that they have an experience in the high school where they can choose from a wider variety of classes and have a more broad experience. And in the event that we see that the high school experience is just not working for certain kids, or they clearly need a different pathway and a more alternative approach, a more relational approach, what have you, at that point, they may wind up on the list. And the list of 30 or so, Ryan could clarify if it's at 30 or so, but that's, I think, what Phil had mentioned earlier, is also prioritized by like high priority kids, and then kids that they think are also appropriate for Katahdin, but are also meeting some measure of success at the high school, and it's not as high of a priority. So they do a great job at like trying to understand what's the profile of a kid who would really thrive in Katahdin, and kind of help us with that admissions process. And then once they're referred to us, there's a whole admissions process that students go through so that they understand Katahdin is a choice, and that it's different, and that we're really very transparent about what our program looks like. And they spend a day with us, just shadowing another student, getting a sense of what it's like. And then they have an interview. And then after the personal interview, if they decide they're still interested, they fill out an application, and then we move forward from there. But yes, there's a number of students that the high school has identified they'd like to place in Katahdin for sure. And there's a pretty decent waiting list.
I mean, it's actually more than what you have, which is
Yeah.
slightly astonishing to me.
Yeah. Well,
frankly.
our school, I have theories about this or thoughts about this. And, a school such as ours could never be too big, or it simply wouldn't work. But it could be bigger than it is with more staffing in a bigger space.
Can you just, final question? I
Yep.
sound like a game show host here.
This is fun. Bring it on.
No. Trishan, do people float in and then float out, or once you're in, you're in? How does that work?
That's a great question. No, there are largely kids get here, and within a week or two, they kind of really enjoy it and they want to be here. Sometimes by the time they're seniors, these 4 walls have gotten a little small, even with all the adventure, even with all the service, the personalities get a little old. It's a small community. So by the time kids are seniors, sometimes they're like, okay, I'm ready. But I think that's probably typical at any school. But yes, we have had, last year we had a student leave here and go to alt ed, and adult ed, and go the high set route. Showing up in person every day was just too much for this particular student. Super bright kid who was a good test taker. And so we recognized that, and we took her over to adult ed and had an interview with her over at adult ed. And she decided, hey, this is a pathway that makes sense for me. And within, I don't know how long, maybe 2 months, she had gotten her high set and she was off. So that pathway happens. And then if kids decide they want to go back to the high school, and they've got whatever behavioral issues or academic issues were getting in their way, have disappeared or been ameliorated over the days and months and years here, then we're totally open to sending kids back, sending kids wherever the most important, most vital place for them to be is. It usually is they end up staying here because they like it, but not necessarily all the time.
Great, thanks for your information. I appreciate it.
And if I could just jump in 1 second here. Kate, just a long-term facilities thing. One spot that we are looking at is the Field Allen building. Once Wyndham Middle School vacates that space as a place for the Katahdin program to then be able to stretch out a little bit and have their own space in their own school. So I know we're a couple years away from that, but that's already in some of the long-range facilities discussions of a great transport place for Katahdin program.
Perfect, thank you.
I would like to say just a lot of gratitude towards Wyndham High School and their utter flexibility in working with us and letting us use the wood shop has been a game changer, a complete game changer for a number of kids. Like one kid that I was certain was not going to make it through the year is now thriving. He just got his first job. He's going to get his driver's license. He has self-esteem. He's building self-esteem. And it all comes down to he's a hands-on learner that loves building things. And he didn't have that option here. And now he does. And that's thanks to the high school, like saying, sure, you can use that space, no problem. And that's made a big difference. So it's been great.
Like to hear that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
Pete?
All right, thanks. And sorry, every time I get ready to talk, my furnace decides it wants to run. So apologize for the background noise. But Craig, I want to thank you, first of all, for, really making the effort to go through your budget and look for ways to cut costs and save money. And it doesn't go unnoticed by any means. But with that being said, I just want to make a comment. Now I'm going to probably turn my direction to my fellow board members. Speaking just for me, it seems with a budget of over $50 million that you shouldn't have to be going to Ruth's Reusables to get $1,500 worth of supplies. That just doesn't seem right to me. If you're doing that, why aren't we having all of our other buildings do that kind of thing? So for me personally, I'd rather see you use that money for something else. And, I would like to see that $1,500 for supplies or whatever you need for supplies be an ask for the budget. So that's just a me thing.
I appreciate that, Pete. You should know that there was zero pressure from anybody for me to do that. That was just me and the staff looking at the horizon and looking at, the revenue shortfall that's likely to happen and thinking, well, how could we, save a little bit and not impact the kids? And that's what we came up with. And the thing about Ruth's that we like is that she has an entrepreneurial spirit. We've gotten to know Ruth over the years, and she's hosted us doing service learning projects there over the year, doing inventory and working in the back. And we've done that for years. And so we kind of have a relationship there. And that relationship has led us to want to actually patronize Ruth's because of philosophical reasons, really. And so we like it. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I totally understand it. And there are material things that we could use, and we won't hesitate to ask for them when we see fit.
Pete, I would like to say that we do use Ruth's across the district. That I know for RES, for example, and we would go there all the time to get things, bizarre things that we could use.
Yeah, but it's just striking when you're reducing a budget to.
Right.
Well,
purpose.
and the other thing is, like I said, Chris didn't ask me, nobody asked. This was something that we volunteered. And if the district determines that we don't need to make that reduction, we won't. But we probably will still go to Ruth's just because we like it there. And the student, sadly, unless we're doing service there with our students, they don't allow students. So you can't bring students there just to go and get materials, but you can when you're doing a service project, obviously. So, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and it's a me thing. It always has been. I just one of the basic responsibilities of a district is.
Oh, yeah. And just so you know, Pete, like they've got us covered. Like they definitely have us covered, and the district has been incredibly generous and welcoming to Katahdin and supportive in every possible way. So this is just something we thought like, hey, the budget could be tight. If not this year, maybe next year, where are some areas that we could cut without impacting students? And that's what we came up with. And, if the district decides that those cuts aren't needed, that's fine. That's great. And if they are, that's fine too. Whatever works.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Marge?
And this was probably for Chris. Craig was talking about summer school for these. Is there a financial impact on, and where would it show up?
So we have started the process of planning for summer school, actually across the district. And the administrators are looking, really the focus so far has been middle to high, and also some of the transition grades and things that happen. So between 5th to 6th, and then also a really critical one between 8 and 9. Marge, we're looking to take that out of some of the federal funds that we received through COVID relief, and so it would not be appearing in the budget. And Christine, if I remember correctly, it's the neighborhood about $70,000 that has been budgeted for summer school.
75,000 at this time. We may adjust that, but that's where we are right now.
Well, that's great. Thank goodness for COVID funds.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the part that we also want to make sure of, and especially for high school students, is credit deficiency, to make sure that they're able to then progress. And I know Ryan and Phil and Vanessa have been doing quite a bit through Eagle Block and have been able to recover quite a bit. But again, we anticipate going into the summer. We want to make sure that kids can transition successfully into next year.
One last piece on that same thing. At some point in time, can we hear or get some information basically stating what students, or how will it be determined which students really are going to need that summer school?
Ryan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so we're in the process at the high school of looking at a pretty robust summer program. So we're going to look at identifying the students that have been in attendance, really. So if they've been attending or trying to attend, we're going to try to qualify them this year. So it won't be the number cutoffs that we've had before. We're very optimistic that given the federal funding for feeding students that runs through June, if we're able to do our planning to pick up, like Craig said, right at the end of the school year and run in June, that we'll be able to maybe have some kids spend a little more time with us than they typically do in the summer, and then provide them some food at the end of the day. So instead of doing a couple hours in the morning, maybe we stretch it to 3.5 hours with a meal before they go. And we are looking at more than just the core subjects, if teachers are available, so that we're covering remediation. We're also maybe covering some 3-week classes in the arts, where a kid could pick up a half a credit that they didn't get this year because they were remediating something from last year. So Vanessa's done a lot of work surveying staff to see who might be interested. We've got a list, and we're in the process of determining staff, and then we need to work with Drew and Randy to decide what we need, what staff, if we have staff that we can use in the job of preparing 8th graders for 9th grade, or if they have staff members that can work with our staff to do that, depending on the numbers. So we've got that big transition concern, and we also have the credit requirement concern.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And I'll just also add, actually, as of yesterday, all the waivers for the National School Lunch Program have been extended to September 30.
Great.
So we know that we'll be able to have that option. Not sure if that's fully public yet, but that's the word on the street and the world of food service.
Craig, did you have something else? You're on mute.
I was just curious. That means free lunch for summer school? Is that what that means? Great. All right.
That's great. And Craig, again, please convey to your huge staff that, how excited we are about your programming, and especially that working together with you and Ryan and Vanessa and Phil to provide the extra woodworking for those kids, the hands-on kids. That's so important.
No, it couldn't have happened without a spirit of collaboration, and that's happening, and it's been great. And thank you to the school board for all you guys do.
Scott.
I'm sorry, Craig, I just thought of this question at the very last minute. Do you have a a revenue side. And the reason why I ask this is because I've got a friend of mine that is actually having a shed built by the Lake Region High School Alternative Education Program up there. So I was curious if there was anything that you had similar, or you guys are thinking about maybe experimenting with in the future. I need a shed.
That's a fabulous question. I love it. Now that we have a wood shop, anything's possible. It also helps that our special education teacher is also a master carpenter on the side. So he has the tools, so to speak, to teach kids those types of skills. So now that we're working down there, anything is possible, and I love the idea.
All right. I'm looking for a 12 by 16, buddy.
Great.
We built them before. Have you ever been out to Mackworth Island?
Yes.
Okay, so the real school, which was the parent school of the Katahdin program years ago, was located on Mackworth Island, and Paul Field, the same teacher that still works here, and about 4 or 5 students built a beautiful post and beam shed, I think 8 by 12, that's now painted red, which actually undermines the fact that it's post and beam. They should have left it natural wood in my humble opinion, but it's red, and it's back behind the former Governor Baxter School for the Deaf, and that was built by Paul and some students. So yes, we have that capacity.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks again. Thanks all of you. We'll move on to Marge is going to give us a motion.
Okay, I move to approve a new Wyndham Middle School Building Committee.
Second.
It's been moved by Marge, seconded by who?
Pete.
Pete, okay. Any public comment? Mr. Howell?
Just for clarity with the public, and I had a chance to go over a little bit, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, kind of talking about the Wyndham Middle School project and some of the immediate steps that were going to be going on. So we have advertised for architectural services. A request for qualifications has gone out. Those are due on March 24th. And in support of that, we are putting together a building committee. And the sole purpose of this committee, I'm going to read right directly from the charge that will be given to the committee. The RSU 14 Board of Directors authorizes the creation of a building committee for guiding representative of the architectural firm selected and the school committee in planning for the construction of a new middle school building in Wyndham. The scope of the building committee's responsibilities will be to recommend to the school committee design, materials, and other such elements and features necessary to construct a building to meet the current and future needs of students. It's the expectation that the building committee will use a district strategic plan, current middle school facilities research, and local educational programming needs to guide their deliberations. And the building committee will include 4 representatives of the RSU 14 Board of Directors, a representative from the Wyndham Town Council, 1 Wyndham Middle School staff member, 4 parents and/or citizens representing a cross-section of the community. It also shall include the superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent, director of facilities, and the Wyndham Middle School principal, all of which being ex officio members of that committee. And the first task of that committee will be starting to review architectural qualification packages beginning of next month. So things are starting to move ahead. We, something I think Drew mentioned it as part of his presentation. The bond date we've been given by the state is 2024. So probably best case scenario, unless we start early, would be opening in the fall of late 25 or early 26 for that project. So that's the charge of the committee.
Okay, any other public discussion? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Kate Briggs,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Christina Small.
Yes.
Okay. I got it, Marge. We're going to, right now have, out of turn, we're going to have public, if there's anybody who wants to be doing public comment. I didn't think there would be, but if there are, please speak now. Okay, thank you. Now we'll have a motion from Christina for the report of the secretary.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 3rd, 2021 meeting.
Second. It's been moved by Christina, seconded by Jenny. Any public comment on the motion? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Kate Burks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes,
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
and Christina Small.
Yes.
Motion carries. Committee reports.
I'll just say that finance is not met, but tomorrow night we have a meeting scheduled with representatives from each of the 2 towns in the districts to gather input in regards to the cost sharing formula as we conduct our review and look to make a recommendation on that. So that's tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And this is a Zoom meeting.
I will say, I will report that the curriculum committee met last Thursday, and we met with the admin talking about their iReady data, and we will be also getting information from the teachers and getting back to the board our what happened and next steps. Anybody else? Okay, thank you then. Board roundtable.
All right. I'll say something. Do we normally have the superintendent's report as part of the committee reports or right afterwards? Because
We have super right after board roundtable.
okay, I think it'd be helpful to have it before the board roundtable. That way, if he doesn't cover something, we could bring it up because
Okay.
maybe you'll talk about this, Chris, in your superintendent's report. But yeah, curious as to what's going on, what you may have heard from the state in terms of expectations for back to school. I know Massachusetts just came out with the fact that, you know, students are going back 5 days a week starting April 5th for the younger grades. So I know with the efforts to get teachers vaccinated first or as a priority, then that must be a precursor to something. So I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you. Anyone else have something round to share? Okay. Superintendent's report.
So Pete, that actually was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, so I will hit that in a second. That's okay. But first of all, a couple things I want to share. First of all, Ryan shared this with me today. Ember Young, who is in the Early Childhood Occupations Program, has been selected as Westbrook Vocational Student of the Semester in that program.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Ember. It takes quite a bit for a student to comfortably step out of the high school and the comfort of that to, first of all, to go and travel to, whether it be Westbrook and Portland every day, but then in addition to that, to excel and to be the student of the month. Congratulations to Ember for that recognition. Wonderful, wonderful news. Also want to share kind of a fun fact that Rich Drummond had texted me a few minutes ago. We were hosting, I think, our first JV volleyball game. And on the live stream, we had 473 individuals on that live stream watching that volleyball match. So pretty exciting that not only do we get to have spectators that are there, but then also things get to be pushed all the way across the nation. Anybody can log in at any time and watch what's going on with that subscription. So I'm glad to see that that part's being used. The Strategic Planning Committee has been busy at work, and we have a couple more meetings scheduled where we're looking to draft some of the final action steps. And then we'll be going through another round of getting some teacher input. We spent some time this afternoon, and other staff input, planning out how we can do that in April. We would like to come to the board for a full update, probably late April, early May, just to give you a taste and flavor of all that's been happening within that committee. Vaccinations, quite a bit has happened within the vaccination scene, and it's amazing how quickly things have moved within the last week. This upcoming Saturday, all of our staff members who are 60 plus will be able to go to Scarborough Downs and receive their vaccination first dose. And it's been quite a few emails. I'm sure the staff is getting sick of me sending updates. But we've been trying to send as much information, and believe it or not, for RC14, that's over 125 individuals who fall in that category. We are anticipating maybe not next weekend, but the following weekend to that expand out to 50 plus. In addition to this, any staff member can go to Walgreens, Sam Club, Hannaford, I'm trying to remember who else is out there, but can then, there's also a new one opening up at the main mall. I also heard today one opening up at the expo, but all sorts of opportunities that are coming forward for those staff vaccinations. And so Pete, part of actually what you're bringing up and part of the discussion is that we have heard that other New England states are going to start relaxing some of their social distancing requirements. And all of us are curious to see what's going to happen with the state of Maine, because as of recent, Commissioner Lambrou and Department of Health and Human Services has stuck with the 3-foot social distancing at class time, 6-foot social distancing, which is one of the, believe it or not, a difficult thing for us when maintaining 6-foot social distancing with students eating, and then also some of the transportation recommendations with 26 to 30 kids on a bus. And so we are curious to see what is going to happen with those numbers. We've been in contact with the commissioner's office, and there's been a real push, local superintendents, that if there's going to be any movements on those, that we need to know as soon as possible, because we can't open. If all of a sudden something changed today, we couldn't open tomorrow because we need to work out schedules and all those other pieces. But we need enough of a significant time. But Pete, I've heard that other New England states, we have representatives in my Cumberland County group who sit on committees across New England, and hearing from other states that things are opening up. And so we're wondering if Maine's going to receive some pressure to relax some of those requirements. We want to see kids back in. We also know we can finish out this year and finish out well. We also know that whatever happens towards the end of this year is going to be what happens at the beginning of next year. And a key component of that are the vaccination of our staff. And so we are hopeful, because for many of our staff members, this is going to be a 2-dose, that at least by middle of April, that all of our staff who are eligible and who are choosing to take vaccinations can do that. Just to remind the public and remind the board that vaccinations cannot be mandatory, because all of these vaccinations were approved as emergency measures by the FDA. Whether or not state legislatures actually then make that open and a requirement further on when actually this becomes officially approved, we'll wait and see. I think that one of the other exciting things that came out this week is the guidance about if you have individuals that are vaccinated and they're together, they don't have to mask. Starting to see some movement in the approval of vaccinations, or studies to approve vaccinations for students, which for us for the fall could be an absolute game changer in being able to return to quite a bit of normalcy. So we are on every single day checking for guidance, and to the extent that we can open up more fully, given that guidance. But as I've shared with the board on multiple occasions, really what we find difficult is making sure that we can feed kids and making sure that we can get kids here to school. In some of the smaller classrooms, you could do 3-foot. The 3-foot social distancing is difficult. The larger ones, it's a little bit easier to do, but some of those tighting points. So it'll be interesting to see if Maine CDC starts to open some of those requirements up. And the last thing I was going to end with, which was summer programming. So we are in the midst of working on planning for that, and with especially with the food waivers now being extended, being able to offer meals to kids while they're here, in addition to being able to send food home with them, and then also taking a look at whether or not we can do a summer meal program like what we've done in the past. But I'll tell you, there's been a little bit of a lift, I think, in the district with vaccinations happening. And it seems like every single day, more and more opportunities are becoming available, and more individuals on staff are being able to have access to that. Marge, you had a question?
I do. Your comment, and we all know it, vaccinations are not mandatory. So when we get to the point when you're able to figure out if we have staff who are choosing not to be vaccinated, how we're planning on handling that, I would be very interested along, I'm sure, with the rest of the board as to hearing about it.
Well, I think the biggest impact to that, Marge, is first of all, I think it's going to be a reality that regardless of what happens with CDC, we're probably going to be wearing masks next year. I don't see at this moment that if I could just look in my crystal ball, I don't see that changing. I think where it becomes a big change for us, and I'm sure the community has enjoyed, I think I've reported out now on 79 COVID cases in our district. And so all those different letters, what has actually become difficult for us in order to be able to keep schools open are some of the quarantine situations that we've run into. Once individual staff members get outside or move themselves outside that 14-day window for their vaccines, they don't have to quarantine if they've been vaccinated. So that will then increase our ability to make sure that we can keep school open. And I'm thankful, honestly, I'm thankful for a district our size that we've only had to close one school for a few days at Wyndham High School and Wyndham Middle School one day. I know Scarborough High School right now, I think they've got 14 active cases, and they're closed in that one school, and they are closed this week and part of next. And actually in the news today, I think my district where my kids go to, there's 1,000 less students. They've had a similar number of cases as what we've had. So I really am thankful for all the work that our community has done and our staff have done to take this seriously and to follow the guidelines.
I hate the terminology, but it is what it is. So is there a possibility that we end up being covered under herd immunity? I hate that. All I can think of is a herd of cows or something, for those few people who choose or, not to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I think
I've heard that.
it's going to be dependent upon Maine CDC. And I think one of the other things, and of course, we don't have many members of the public tonight, but hopefully someone will go ahead and watch the reruns. All of the safety requirements which we're required to follow, we had to sign off as a district in order to receive the federal funds that we received. So, there's some things that have a little bit of flexibility, but some of the social distancing and other school cleaning things, those are absolute requirements that we need to do. And one couple things that are just difficult for us as a district is that we do have large classes. Many of our buildings, such as Wyndham Primary School, there are small classrooms. And another struggle we have, we do not have neighborhood schools. There are parts of the state where, the significant amount of population who can walk to school or are in close enough proximity, our families rely upon transportation. And, if we can't, and there are a number of kids who don't have families that can get them to school. So we are very, very reliant on that. So just some additional elements that we're struggling with as being a large district to opening more fully. But you know what, we're problem solvers, and we'll figure some things out. But excited about the vaccinations and not having to quarantine a number of staff going forward, because those Sunday afternoon phone calls or those Friday ones in which, our administrators are working through a case, As much fun as it's been to make those calls and do those texts, I'm ready to say, all right, let's move on to something else.
Scott?
Chris, I would recommend that, I don't know who does the scheduling for the vaccinations, but I would recommend staggering out those vaccinations between schools for the event that there are after side effects. You don't want to send an entire school staff and then the following day or two, they're all out sick because they are experiencing symptoms.
No, it's a great point, Scott, and it's something we've talked about in our planning, because you're absolutely right. Usually it's first shot, first dose, everyone's okay. It's the second dose, if you're in Moderna or Pfizer, that tends to have a little bit more of a kick. And my wife, who's in healthcare and had her second one, she was out for a good 24 hours after that second shot. So we need to put that in our planning. And but also at this point, if it means that we need to do a remote day, so to make sure we get everyone vaccinated, it might speed things up on the other end. So we'll keep a close eye on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Scott, you want to give us a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Been moved by Scott, seconded by Marge. All those in favor?
Kate Briggs,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
and Christina Small.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to, especially to Drew and to Craig and to Ryan and to Kyle and the others who are here. Thanks to Vanessa and thanks to Phil. Did I miss anybody? Thank you for coming and helping us. And thanks, Beth. Take care, everyone.
Right.